They say life changes in moments. For me, it wasn't during a corporate merger or a flashy press conference. It wasn't the day I made my first million or the day Forbes put my name in print. It was a cold Thursday evening in November, and the city park was nearly deserted. I had just closed a $12 million commercial real estate deal, my third major win that quarter. The numbers looked good, the investors were thrilled, and my team wanted to celebrate. But I wasn't in the mood for champagne. I told them I needed air. Truth was, despite the success, something hollow echoed inside me. So I wandered. I loosened my tie and walked past the fountain, the rustling leaves, the dim street lamps flickering against the twilight. That's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was a trash bag, a cardboard box pushed up against a worn wooden bench. But as I approached, I heard it, a soft whimper, like a kitten, barely audible. I froze. Inside the box was a baby, tiny, shivering, wrapped in a thin, tattered blue blanket, eyes swollen from crying. His cheeks were red and raw. His hands, clenched tightly, were trembling from the cold. There was no note, no bottle, just him, alone and abandoned on a cold bench as the city turned a blind eye. I didn't think. I couldn't. I scooped him up and held him close. He fit into my arms like he was meant to be there. And then he stopped crying. He looked up at me, and our eyes locked. Something shifted. In that instant, my billion-dollar deals, my penthouse suite, the endless meetings, they meant nothing. All I could see was this fragile little life clinging to survival, and somehow, I knew he belonged with me. I rushed him to the nearest hospital. The doctors checked his vitals and ran tests. Dehydrated, mildly undernourished, but otherwise, miraculously, healthy. The nurse looked at me as she swaddled him in clean blankets. "Do you know who left him?" I shook my head. "No." "But I found him. No ID. No name," she said. "We'll have to notify child services." My chest tightened. I looked at the baby again. His eyes had closed peacefully now, and he clutched my finger with such innocent strength. "What happens to him now?" I asked. "He'll be placed into foster care. If he's lucky, he'll get adopted." I'd made snap decisions in billion-dollar meetings before, but none felt as irreversible or raw as this. "I want to take him," I said. "I'll raise him." The nurse blinked. "Sir, that's not how this works. There's a process. Paperwork. Approvals." "I'll go through it," I said firmly. "But I'm not walking away." That night, I stayed by his side in the hospital, holding him while the machines beeped quietly in the background. They found nothing in the system, no missing persons report that matched. No security footage. Nothing but a blanket with a single word stitched in its corner. Alec. And that's what I called him. I was 37 years old. A self-made millionaire with more properties than I could count, a growing list of accolades, and not a single meaningful connection in my life. My parents had died years earlier. I had no siblings, no partner. My world was sterile and profitable. But now I had Alec. The adoption process took months, but I didn't care. I moved meetings, canceled travel. I learned to hold bottles and burp properly. I sat through parenting classes with 20-somethings and single moms and had more diapers delivered to my mansion than I knew what to do with. I was clumsy, awkward, and terrified, but completely, utterly committed. One night, after a particularly sleepless stretch, I found myself rocking Alec in the nursery at 3 a.m., whispering promises I never thought I'd make. "I don't know where you came from, little man," I said softly, "but I swear, wherever life takes us, you'll never be alone again." Alec gurgled in response and gave me the tiniest grin. And that was it. That was the moment. I'd built skyscrapers, created jobs, negotiated with giants, but that night, holding him in my arms, I felt like I'd finally built something that mattered. I didn't care that people whispered behind my back, questioning why a millionaire bachelor would take in an abandoned child. They didn't understand. They couldn't. This wasn't a rescue. This was destiny. Looking back now, I realize I thought I was saving Alec. But in truth, he was saving me from isolation, from arrogance, from the silent emptiness that success often hides. That baby on the bench didn't just need a home. He gave me a reason to build one. Raising Alec wasn't just a new chapter, it was an entirely different book. Gone were the days of late-night boardroom strategy sessions. My time was now split between investor calls and assembling toy trains, between market projections and preschool pickups. And I loved every second of it. He grew fast. Too fast, honestly. One day I was teaching him how to walk across my marble-floored hallway. The next, he was asking if he could build a robot out of a toaster. I had never seen a child so curious, so fiercely intelligent. He would take apart gadgets, line up puzzle pieces without looking at the picture, and ask questions that even left my CFO scratching his head. By the time Alec turned 6, he was solving Rubik's Cubes in under 30 seconds and coding basic apps on an old iPad. I enrolled him in one of the city's top private schools, and even there, he stood out, not just for his mind, but for his heart. He was always kind, always watching others, making sure they were okay. It was as if, on some instinctual level, he remembered where he had come from, even if he didn't consciously know it. But as Alec flourished, I began to notice something I hadn't expected. The more I poured into him, the more I saw myself through his eyes, not as the man who built an empire, but simply as Dad. Not the articles, not the bank accounts, not the polished shoes, but the man who made him pancakes every Sunday and helped him chase dreams bigger than both of us. And truth be told, I wasn't always sure I deserved that kind of love. I hadn't grown up like Alec. My childhood was rough. Father in prison, mother juggling 3 jobs, no heat in the winters. I'd fought tooth and nail to escape poverty, to rise, to prove that I wasn't born to be forgotten. But I had scars, emotional ones, that made me hard, cautious. Alec softened those parts. He called me Dad, without hesitation. Not sir, not Mr. Westbrook like my staff, just Dad. And for the first time in decades, I didn't feel alone. But even as the years passed and my net worth climbed into the billions, I made a decision. Alec wouldn't inherit privilege. He'd inherit purpose. So when he turned 10, I took him on a trip, not to Disneyland, but to the neighborhood where I grew up. The streets were rougher now, but the message was clear. I want you to see what building from nothing looks like, I told him, so that when you build, you'll understand what you're lifting others from. He didn't say much that day, just looked, observed. But that night, back in the hotel, he came to me quietly and said, Dad, I think I know why you work so hard. It's not just about money, is it? I smiled, ruffling his hair. No, son, it's about impact. From that moment on, Alec changed. He started helping his classmates with their homework, building computer programs for teachers, even designing a tutoring app by the time he was 13. He didn't chase attention. He chased solutions. One afternoon, I walked into my study and found him staring at an old photo on the wall. It was from the night I found him, me holding a bundle in a hospital chair, eyes weary but full of something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Do you ever wonder who left me there? He asked softly. My throat tightened. Sometimes, I admitted. But whoever they were, they lost the chance to know the most extraordinary person I've ever met. He nodded, but I saw it in his eyes, that yearning, that silent pull toward identity, roots, origin. Still, he never pushed. He respected the silence around that chapter. At 15, Alec was accepted into a prestigious summer tech incubator for young innovators. He developed an AI-powered platform to connect homeless youth with local shelters and resources. I watched him present in front of a panel of venture capitalists with more poise and conviction than most executives twice his age. The room gave him a standing ovation. One investor approached me afterward. Your son is going to change the world. I don't doubt it, I replied, pride swelling in my chest. By 17, Alec had offers from MIT, Stanford, and Oxford. But he chose Stanford, close to home, close to me. I remember the night before he left for college. We sat out on the balcony, looking over the city skyline. You changed my life, Dad, he said quietly. You gave me everything. No, I said, voice thick. You gave me something no one else ever could, a reason to slow down and live. He hugged me then, a strong, full-hearted embrace that lingered like a promise. Little did I know, the promise we shared would soon be tested in ways I never saw coming. It was a quiet Sunday when everything changed. Alec had just turned 21 and was home from Stanford for the summer. We were in the study, where sunlight poured across the oak floors. He looked older now, sharper jawline, broader shoulders, but that same thoughtful look never left his eyes. "Dad," he said slowly, "I did something, and I need to tell you." My heart paused. He pulled out a manila envelope and placed it gently on the table between us. I took a DNA test. Silence fell between us, like shattered glass. I didn't stop him, I couldn't. My lips parted, but no words came out. He continued, voice trembling but steady. "I just needed to know not because I don't love you. You're my father in every way that matters. But I needed answers." I nodded, slowly. "What did you find?" He hesitated, eyes flicking down to the folder. "My biological father, he's alive. And not just that, he's in prison, serving a life sentence." A chill ran down my spine. "For what?" I whispered, already fearing the answer. "Murder," he said. "2 counts." I sank back into my chair, breath caught in my throat.
He was part of a gang.
There was a raid. He killed 2 officers in cold blood. My hands trembled. I had built a billion-dollar company from nothing, stared down competitors, faced economic storms, but nothing had prepared me for this. And my mother, he added, voice growing quiet, was an addict. She overdosed a week after I was born. I was found in the hospital nursery because she left me there and never came back. I felt a crushing pain in my chest, not just for Alec, but for the fragile baby he once was, abandoned by the world, left to be forgotten until I stepped into that hospital. He looked at me then like a man watching his world shift. "Do you regret taking me in?" he asked, almost too softly. I stood up, walked to him, and pulled him into a tight embrace.
"Never. You are my son, Alec."
"It doesn't matter what blood runs in your veins. What matters is who you chose to become. And you, son, you're the best decision I ever made." But I'd be lying if I said that night didn't haunt me. The truth settled over our home, like a storm cloud. For days, I kept replaying Alec's words. Was darkness something inherited or conquered? I had always told him that our past doesn't define us, but now I wondered if I truly believed that. If he was the son of a killer, would that stain follow him? One morning, Alec came into the kitchen with determination in his eyes.
"I wrote to him," he said.
I froze. "To your biological father?" He nodded. I needed to see for myself. To close that door. I didn't try to stop him. This was his journey now. Weeks passed before a letter arrived. I'll never forget Alec's face as he read it.
Calm, cold, silent.
When he finished, he slid it across the table to me. The letter was chilling, written by a man with no remorse. He claimed Alec would never escape who he truly was. That blood was destiny. That Alec was lucky to have been abandoned because it saved him from becoming a monster. I crumpled the letter, rage rising in me. But Alec just looked away, toward the horizon outside our glass windows. "I needed to read that," he said, "because now I know I'll never be him." That was the moment I knew Alec had made his choice, not just about who he wanted to be, but who he refused to become. We never spoke of the man again. But something shifted in Alec. A quiet fire lit behind his calm exterior. He began working harder, sleeping less, building more. He launched his nonprofit tech platform, Brighter Step, to help children born into abusive or incarcerated families. His mission was simple: break the cycle. He spoke at conferences, met with governors, even testified before Congress about juvenile justice reform and the power of early intervention through education and mentorship. He told his story openly, never hiding the truth. But he always ended with the same line: "I am not my bloodline. I am my choices." And people listened. Alec became a movement. One evening, after a national interview aired, I found him sitting alone on the rooftop of our house. City lights flickered like stars beneath us. I used to wonder if you'd still love me if you knew where I came from, he admitted. I sat beside him, quietly. I knew, I said. He turned to me, eyes wide. What? I nodded. The hospital nurse left a copy of your mother's ID in your intake form. I did my research. I knew everything from the beginning. His breath hitched. And you still took me? He asked, voice raw. Especially because of that, I replied. Because I knew the world would count you out. And I wasn't going to let that happen. Tears welled in his eyes. He looked down, then back at me. Thank you for choosing me. I smiled.
No, son.
Thank you for choosing who you became. The past didn't define him. It refined him. Alec wasn't just my son. He was proof that redemption wasn't just possible, it could be passed on. Years passed. The world watched Alec grow from a determined visionary into a global force for good. He wasn't just a successful entrepreneur or an eloquent speaker. He became a symbol. A symbol that where you begin does not define where you end. He was featured on the covers of magazines, shook hands with presidents, and was even nominated for a humanitarian award from the United Nations. But no matter how high he climbed, Alec always came home for dinner every Sunday. That never changed. I was a self-made billionaire, but Alec taught me something I'd never learned from wealth: how to give without expecting anything back. One morning, I stood at the window of my study, holding a letter from my legal team. It was time to finalize something I'd been planning for over a year. When Alec walked in, I looked up, heart pounding. I've decided to retire. He raised an eyebrow, surprised. Seriously? I chuckled. Seriously. The company's in good hands. I've made arrangements for the transition. Alec walked over, concern flashing across his face. Is this about your health? I shook my head.
No, son.
It's about legacy. I handed him a thick envelope. He opened it slowly, reading the documents inside: trust agreements, board announcements, and one page marked confidential. His eyes widened. You're giving me everything? Not everything, I smiled. Just the responsibility of continuing what we started, what you helped me remember. He blinked hard, trying to keep tears from falling. I don't know what to say.
Say yes, I said.
And build something that outlives both of us. He nodded, overwhelmed. I will. That year, Alec took the reins of the empire I'd spent my life building and reimagined it. He integrated social impact into every business line, created ethical investment models, and mandated funding for youth mentorship programs across the globe. The company's profits didn't fall, they soared. Because the world wasn't just ready for change, it was hungry for it. But one event would test everything he'd built. It was a crisp autumn evening when I got the call. Alec had collapsed during a keynote speech in Berlin. At first, I thought it was exhaustion. Then came the medical reports. A rare genetic heart condition, undiagnosed and dormant all these years, had suddenly become life-threatening. I was in the hospital room when he woke up. He looked pale, but his spirit was there, flickering behind his eyes. They say I need a transplant, he said quietly. The chances are low. I'm on the list, but... I grabbed his hand. We'll fight. You hear me? We'll fight this. Weeks blurred into months. Every time the phone rang, my heart leapt. I sat by his side, reading him the letters pouring in from children, mothers, teachers, people whose lives he'd changed. He smiled weakly one night and whispered, "If I don't make it, you keep going, okay?" I leaned in, fighting tears. "You're going to make it." He shook his head. "Promise me." I held his hand tighter than I ever had. "I promise," I said. "But you're not going anywhere." Then, on a rainy Tuesday morning, the impossible happened. A match. A donor heart. Emergency surgery was scheduled. As they wheeled him into the operating room, I kissed his forehead like I had when he was just a baby in that hospital crib. "I've got you," I whispered, just like before. The surgery lasted 12 hours. Every second felt like a lifetime. When the surgeon finally emerged, mask pulled down and eyes weary, he smiled. He made it. A wave of relief washed over me, and I wept. Not like a billionaire. Not like a man used to power. Just like a father. Alex's recovery was slow, but steady. Each day he grew stronger, his heart, now literally a gift from another, beating with new purpose. A few months later, we hosted a massive gala. Not for business, not for politics, but to honor the anonymous donor who had saved his life. Halfway through the evening, our head of foundation stepped on stage and made an announcement that silenced the entire hall. The donor's identity has been released to us by the family, she said, and we feel it's important to share. A large screen lit up behind her.
A name.
A photo. I dropped my wine glass. It was him, Alex's biological father, the man in prison. He'd died from a sudden infection while incarcerated. But in his final weeks, after reading Alex's interviews, he had requested to be placed on the organ donor list for one recipient only. His son, the man he never raised. Gasps filled the room. The irony, the pain, the complicated miracle of it all. Alex stood up, still recovering, and made his way to the microphone. The room was silent. I never knew him, Alex said. And I don't excuse who he was. But in the end, he made a choice. One act of redemption. And that choice gave me life. Again. He paused, scanning the audience. I am proof that no life is ever too broken to matter. That legacy isn't in blood, but in impact. And I will honor that second chance, not just with gratitude, but with action. Thunderous applause erupted. And in that moment I knew, this story, our story, wasn't about wealth. It was about choice. I found a helpless baby on the coldest day of my life. And he became the fire that warmed the world. Today, Alec leads one of the most influential philanthropic business hybrids in the world. He's alive, thriving, and raising 2 daughters with the same values we built our life on: kindness, integrity, and unshakable hope. I sit on the porch now, older, hands wrinkled but heart full. He calls me every night.
Not because he has to,
but because love, real love, is never lost. It multiplies.